Greetings, family. Sister Shanice in the house. We are live. I've got internet challenges this evening. I apologize in advance for the quality of the broadcast. I certainly hope that it doesn't interfere too much with your viewing. But tell me how I'm coming across. It's freezing my end. Certainly hope that that isn't the case where you are. And my guest for tonight is having a few challenges logging on as well. Hopefully, he will be able to get on board very soon. He's actually sending messages to me behind the scenes, and from what I can see, he sent me an image, and I know that that image is going to be suggesting that there is a problem. So I've sent him the link again. Let's hope that this link gets him on board, because we've got, as always, a really interesting show lined up for you. But as always, you know, the powers that be try and prevent us from getting the messages out to our people. The internet, okay. So last week we had a major problem with the internet here in the Gambia. The road workmen decided that they were going to cut through all the internet cables. And so I was without internet, and so were thousands of other people without internet for the whole weekend. So got through that. And now, and since, when did they put it back on? Monday morning. It's been fine until about half hour ago. So what can I make of that? So my guest is struggling to get on. Certainly hope that he's going to family. I am going to be swinging this show solo. I'm going to use this opportunity actually just to remember, as you come through the door, I'd like us all to remember this particular date. It is Wednesday, the 18th of January, and it was 42 years ago today, family, that in Lewisham, New Cross, Southeast London, there was a major incident. It was a fire. And as a result of that fire that took place in New Cross back in 1981, it led to the death of 14 young Black people who had come together to celebrate a birthday, a 16-year-old birthday party. Now, to this day, there has been no thorough and proper investigation into this particular incident. And we are still calling for a thorough investigation into that fire. But what we do know and what we have experienced as a result of that incident is that the police handling of it was just so incompetent. As far as we were concerned as a community, it was because, as far as they were concerned, the number of young people who had died were all Black. And of this case was due to racism in the hands of the police. And that, you know, concern that we have of police cases when it involves us as a people has largely been confirmed in a number of reports. So what I'm saying isn't anything new here. But what happened back on the 18th of January, 1981, is that at that birthday party, an incident occurred. Someone said they saw someone from outside throw something in the window or through the door of the party that set the place ablaze. It was a two-story building, 2 or 3 story building, and there were people downstairs in the middle floor and upstairs. And when the fire broke out, it trapped the people who were upstairs. They were having to jump out the window. Really, really awful. And, you know, it was a devastating blaze and killed 2 members of the same family, Yvonne Ruddock and her brother, who were members of the same family as well. It was Yvonne Ruddock's teenage birthday party. And as well as all of those 13 that died, and one who subsequently took his own life as a result of the incident. There were 27 others that were seriously injured on that day as well. And all of those survivors have been traumatized by the incident. And all these years later, you know, despite, you know, how horrific this event was, you know, there has been no thorough investigation that's come to a conclusion as to what started that fire, how the fire, exactly how the fire started, and who started the fire. And, you know, also what has happened that's been quite concerning about this is that there was someone who was doing life in prison who was supposedly, his name was Smithyman, and apparently he was meant to have confessed that he was there on the night, that he tried to enter the party, him and a friend, they were turned away, and as a result of being turned away, they decided to take revenge and throw some kind of firebomb into the party. So this murderer who was doing time in prison is supposed to have confessed to this event. But we don't know if that was a true confession or not, because that hasn't been thoroughly investigated. You know, this person was a convicted killer. He could say that he did any one of many murders or incidences that have been unsolved. You know, so, but that confession hasn't even been properly investigated. So as a community, you know, we are calling for a thorough investigation into precisely what happened on that day. I've got my guest backstage, so I'm going to be bringing him on soon. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, please do join me, you know, in calling for a thorough investigation into precisely what happened on that day, the 18th of January, 1981, because we still need to know what happened. Now, I'm going to call out the names of all of the young people who lost their lives in that New Cross fire those years ago, because even though they're not with us today, we haven't forgotten them, family, and we remember them. So join me in remembrance as we call their names. Patrick Cummings, we remember you. Andrew Goodin, we remember you. Peter Campbell, we remember you. Gary Paul Francis, we remember you. Steve Collins, we remember you. Patricia Johnson, we remember you. Roslyn Henry, we remember you. Lloyd Hall, we remember you. Humphrey Godfrey, we remember you. Owen Thompson, we remember you. Yvonne Ruddock, we remember you. Glenton Powell, we remember you. Paul Ruddock, we remember you. Anthony Birbeck, we remember you. We remember the tragic incident as well. We remember you, and you will not be forgotten. And for as long as we have breath, we will be calling for an investigation. Okay, family, apologies in advance for the challenges with the internet, but we are definitely going to be doing the best we can to press ahead with the show. Hopefully the internet that my guest has is much better than mine, because at the end of the day, he's the one that you want to be hearing from and not me. So let's bring my guest onto the front of the stage right now, none other than our brother, Pharaoh Theo. Greetings, my brother. How are you doing?
Jumbo,
Are you hearing me?
yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm not hearing you. Are you talking to me? Are you
Yes, I
hearing
was
me,
wondering.
brother Pharaoh? Ah, yes, I'm hearing you now. Jumbo, jumbo. I'm hearing you
Okay,
now. I do have some internet challenges, but let's mhm.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thanks for the wonderful opportunity to actually be on your
There seems
platform
to be a little
tonight.
delay on the line.
Um, I know we won't give up. We will keep coming and we will keep educating and try to talk to our people. That's the only way we can actually
It's
spread our knowledge, and maybe we can spread our wisdom. Teaching is everything. I remember when I was still very, very ignorant,
mhm,
certain things I used to play part of the blame game.
mhm,
I used
mhm,
to like blame Africans.
mhm,
I used to blame
mhm,
our ancestors. I blame our parents for not teaching me. And then
mhm,
later on, I studied a couple of things. I realized instead of blaming these Africans, a lot of them are unaware. Sometimes we might as well just educate them, and by so doing, we might change the narrative. We might bring them up to standard. They might fully understand. And we strongly believe the more, if you get to understand something, and then you can probably deal with that thing better. Like if you go to a hospital today, the reason there might be a success rate is when the doctors and the nurses, they actually know what you're suffering from. So instead of them giving you wrong medication, whereas you're suffering from something else, it might cause some form of friction, it might cause some form of an imbalance within the system, and then you stay sick maybe for the rest of your life.
mhm.
Whereas a simple diagnosis and a simple treatment or a simple cure might have just finished the thing within seconds, and then you'll be back on your way home. So I still am using this opportunity to say thank you, Sister Shanice, for the wonderful job you're doing. We won't stop. We're behind you. We want a situation where Africans can congregate. They have their United Nations, they have their
Mm,
IMF, they have their UNESCO, they have their FIFA, they have their Francophonie, they have this and that. So we Africans equally, and all these their so-called organizations, they lead in the United Nations, African countries. Africa is made up of 54 countries. They say with 2 billion, they say 1.3 billion of us. We over 4 billion.
mm,
They keep hiding our population to say we're the minority. There are too many black people in Thailand, too many black people in India, too many black people in Vietnam. They don't talk about this. They keep trying to suppress us. We are the never again generation. We won't allow them. And the only way we can change them is education. We have to educate, teach our people, inform them. An informed person is a very powerful person. I'll leave it now for the introduction, and I'll wait for you to run, and then you can call me in, and then we can start or go into details. Thank you very much, darling. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much. I was already so hooked into what you were saying there, and it was just the opening. So I'm just going to welcome the audience and bring you straight back in, my brother Chiro. We need to hear from you. We've got Tianja who said, Sister Shanice, your interview regarding the situation in Haiti firsthand has ignited a spark in the sisters of my circle. Give thanks, beloved, just like the interview from JA stirred minds and hearts. Thank you so much. Certainly hope that tonight's interview is going to be stirring hearts and minds tonight. KZ in the house, welcome, welcome. We've got our brother Mendeli in the house, Yenge Pimpa Kiambote, my brother Mandele. He's saying greetings in the house. Peace and love, S.A. Smith. Peace and love, Tianja. Welcome from Bermuda, Sister Afri-Jamo, watching from Ghana. Welcome, welcome, Sister Afri-Jamo. We've got Cherry B in the house saying greetings. Yes, greetings back at you. And watching us from Birmingham in the UK. Welcome, Belinda as well. Welcome, Sister Vanna from Phenomenal Women in the house. And she says, in relation to the new crossfire, this is so tragic. A thorough investigation is so needed. We must never forget them. Absolutely not, Sister V. And thank you for joining us this evening. We've got Kratisur in the house saying hi, Sister Shanice, and everyone in the chat. I'm having lunch here in New York City as I listen. Woo woo! Welcome all the way from New York City. What's it like out there right now? Malanga's in the house. Peace, love, and power back at you. Mr. IC3, Black is in the house sending us greetings. Thank you so, so much. And to everyone else in the house, if you want to drop us a message, any comments, any questions as we go through the show today, you are most welcome to do so. And periodically, when I get the signal from our speaker, I will go to the chat and bring in your comments or your questions. So today's topic for discussion from our brother Pharaoh Shio is how slavery and the slave trade were rebranded to colonization, how the Haitian War of Independence and the 15th Amendment of the US Constitution created the Berlin Conference, the anti-African agreements such as the French Cooperative Agreement, the Lancaster House Agreement, the Berlin Conference Agreement, the Toronto Protocol. What mistakes can we as Africans learn from in the past so that we never make the same mistakes again? As our brother was saying in his opening, this generation is saying never again, never again. And if it is to be the case of never again, then we've got to learn from the past. Hence why these educational programs are just so, so important. And so I'm delighted to bring to the platform today our brother Pharaoh Shio. He is a farmer, a Pan-Africanist, a researcher. He's going to be telling you so much more about himself. So I'm delighted. He's someone who's in a couple of my WhatsApp groups, and I love his commenting people think. And I reached out to the brother, and I'm like, we all need to hear from you. Let me give you the platform now, my brother, so that you can take the show away.
Thank you so much again for that. Jumbo Africa, Grand Rising Mama Africa. Hopefully my message should spread across the world and reach every Black person. So it's on the only way we can get to empower ourselves. Hopefully our knowledge should not only stay with us. We have to impact and impart this knowledge to the other generation coming after we're gone. First and foremost, I'll be very grateful to the Haitians. You've talked about the Haitian War of Independence. What most Africans don't know, Asia seems to be the first Black country to exist. They had their independence on the 1st of January 1804, and it was they set the precedence. It was thanks to Haiti that we have all the other Black nations today. In a system where the Europeans and the Americans or the Caucasians or the whites, whatever we want to call them or you want to call them, where they had their military dominance and their military supremacy. At the time where slavery and slave trade was at its apex, we had Napoleon Bonaparte fighting for the French or fighting for the French Empire, fighting with the French Empire. So we had the British Empire alongside with them when we had the Americans. Don't forget, these are nations that existed and they had practiced slavery and slave trade over about 300 years, coming to 1800. And then when this black guy, Toussaint, started all the revolution. And then Napoleon, on the other hand, the Americans and the Brits and the French, they had to station Napoleon on that stretch of the world, knowing fully well Napoleon was a military strategist, the best they had at the time, and then he could easily crush any insurrection coming from Haiti. And then, but the Haitians, they had to assemble all the other Africans. We had our voodoo, we had our spells, we had our rituals, we had our ceremonies. We had done all what we had to do, but understandably, we knew we will be facing a very, very formidable opponent. A very, very formidable opponent. I will have conversations with some people saying these nations, they are very, very powerful. Sometimes in war, you don't need the most sophisticated weapons. Sometimes in war, you need determination. We've seen that in the American-Vietnam War. We've seen that in the America versus the Somalis in 1993, depicted in their movie Black Hawk Down. We've seen all of that. The Somalians weren't as armed like the Americans, but did the Americans win? No. The Viets, on the other hand, they were not as armed as the Americans were, but did the Americans win? No. A disgrace and one of the biggest casualty, one of the biggest disaster in life, where 53,000 Americans died and about 28,000 Americans missing to this day. You got my figures right. Yes. Yes. So America lost over 78,000 military service personnel in Vietnam. Anyway, let's go back to where we really focused and where it really concerns us. And then now we've set the stage. Napoleon, on the other hand, stationed his cannons, had support from Britain, from America, from obviously Germany, and then all these other countries, because slavery and slave trade was a whole system, a very sophisticated system. They had a system where a slave, if you looked at the Virginia Act of 1705, remarkably, the United States had our independence on the 4th of July, 1776. But you're talking about a Virginia Act of 1705. So now they come again and they tell us this history thing. Slavery and slave trade started on the 2nd of August, 1719. But we've got an act in 1705 how to deal with slaves. Slaves had to be processed before they are sold. So we've got all this misconception. We've got all this deliberate ploy, deliberate act of systematically altering the narrative, changing history, making it suit their purpose, and then in order to subjugate Black people. They're not really interested in maybe subjugating the Chinese. Maybe they've tried, but the Chinese, they have a sophisticated way of rising above that. Now, the only focus should be us, Blacks, because we are a threat. And then you shouldn't really bother if somebody is weak. We are not weak. We are strong. Anyway, so they had that. And then one of the strongest battle, we had it. And then Haiti gained her independence on the 1st of January, 1804. Some school of thoughts, they take it up to 1805, which is cool, And then now, their big Napoleon crushed. The big British cannons crushed. The United States wagons cannon crushed. Now, there was another problem now. Do we really allow, don't forget, if you look at the justifications of slavery and slave trade, Caucasians, white people, they ultimately said, Black people cannot govern themselves. We cannot look after ourselves. We cannot rule ourselves. We're cannibals. If they don't do slavery and slave trade, we will eat each other. So technically, they were saying slavery and slave trade was a favor. They're doing Black people a favor. So we understand all this was just to justify. Don't forget, back in those days, they had their parliament. For slavery and slave trade to be deemed legal, it went through parliament. It passed through parliament. I'll come to it when we talk about William Wilberforce in this country, in the UK. We'll talk about William Wilberforce because according to history, their history, William Wilberforce is the biggest abolitionist. And then you ask yourself, why would William Wilberforce abolish such a lucrative trade? The biggest trade in the ancient world. William Wilberforce, a British guy, was an MP for South Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. He abolished the most lucrative trade. We don't understand that today. And then we've tried to do a bit of research. Been to Leeds, we've been to Yorkshire, we've asked them for evidence, because in the UK, for anything to pass through parliament, they need 100,000 votes. We don't know how, or petitions. We don't know how it was back then. So we've asked for this information or this evidence or whatever you want to call it. And obviously they came up with their ploy. Mr. Chill, we will get back to you on that one. And then we've been waiting. Anyway, when Haiti gained her independence, like I said, 1st of January 1804, some school of thought say 1805, between 1804 and 1805, Caucasians now went, the supremacists, the white supremacists, now they went to Asia, to Haiti, and they were like, okay, hang on. Right, fine. You've won your independence. Now, for you to flourish or for you to actually exist as a country or like a nation, There are certain treaties you have to sign. Hang on a minute. I've won my independence from you. I've taken away my freedom. I don't want to be under your shackles no more. I don't want to be under any form of oppression. Fine. I'm the oppressed. I've won my freedom. I'm free. I should be able to do what I want. You'll be shocked. It worked. We will control your money. We will control your infrastructure. We will control your cabinet reshufflement, technically governance, and all these things. It worked. Okay, now, and then all the black population on earth, they looked at it and they was like, hang on, if Haiti can gain her independence, so can we. And then there was a collective insurrection amongst the black clans. Collective insurrection. We didn't care. We spoke Mandinka, we spoke Igbo, we spoke Yoruba, we spoke Hausa, we spoke Fulani, Ntebele, Shona, whatever, Lingala. And then we understood the dynamics that in order for us to actually really survive, we have to fight. There was no way to eat. And then we know the story of women jumping overboard. Women would drown their babies. They didn't want their babies to grow into under all this form of bondage. So they would rather kill their babies than make their babies go to these plantations and be in bondage for life. And then if we are to go into the facets or how slavery and slave trade was really carried upon or on our people, I think that should be a subject for another time. And then we had that, and then it wasn't working anymore. The UK had a Lloyd's Bank, which funded slavery and slave trade. People said again the business was no longer lucrative, and they had their insurance companies, which insured the ships. So we got to a point where the ships could no longer dock. The ships were not coming. They will leave the coast in the Gambia, in Senegal, in Nigeria, but they won't get to the UK. They won't arrive the United States, because now the slaves were fighting and they were throwing the captains overboard and they were seizing the ships. And then the insurance company, because it was very, very risky, so the insurance companies will not insure the ships. And then Lloyd's Bank, on the other hand, will no longer give loans to slave merchants. So it was crumbling. It was crumbling. And they had no other option. Again, at that time, there was political upheavals. And then the churches were fighting the witches. You practice witchcraft, they'll kill you in the market square, the town square, town center, usually by hanging to discourage or to frighten another person, like practicing some form of sorcery. They used to do that. So what some political dropouts or some political figures would do, they used to recruit the slaves because there was abundant labor. And then they used to recruit the slaves and they would fight the government. So even an opposition member had a ready available workforce to be able to fight the government. So it got to a point nothing seems to be working. The country was stagnating. They would burn down the plantations. They used to kill the children of the slave. People call them masters. I really don't want to call them master. A master is an individual with a rare craft. A master is a teacher with a rare craft. And then the disciples or the students, they follow. So I would rather just call them slave merchants or slave owners. Please, I really get sick when people call them slave masters, because a master will not enslave. A master is a teacher with a rare craft, something that people follow. So if we call them slave masters, I'm afraid we're making it like, anyway, all the same. So it got to that tenacity where everything wasn't working. They had no option. Slavery and slave trade had to be abandoned. It's got nothing to do with William Wilberforce, an MP, because all the MPs, or I would say 98% of the MPs in the United Kingdom, were slave traders. They benefited. That was the only lucrative trade back then, because we never really had all the machines. So everything came from human labor, and the labor came from our ancestors. That labor came from Africa. So it got to a point now, it was like, hang on a minute, I cannot insure your ships no more. Like their workforce, what equivalent today is the job center, where they used to offer training on how to capture slaves and how to buy slaves. All these centers were no longer working because they became targets. And then parents wouldn't send their children to partake again in the capture of flesh, as they used to call it. They will no longer capture flesh. They will no longer come to Africa because it was just not working. And then on the 14th of July, 1833, Britain abolished slavery and slave trade. Okay, it did not end there. It made it illegal in the UK only. The thing is, what most Africans forget, slavery and slave trade was very sophisticated. And it was a joint partnership, all these nations. Why did they not end it at once? Collectively, they were all doing it. So why did they not end it? And then you're saying, okay, this is illegal. It is illegal for you to trade in humans. Human traffic, human trade, human sales is banned. If you practice it now, you go into prison. Why was it not collective? And I'll tell you why. It was abolished in America. It was abolished in the UK in 1833. It was abolished in America in 1865. It was abolished in Brazil maybe 1857. Argentina, which Argentina refused giving citizenship or nationalities to all the blacks, so they moved into Brazil. We'll come to that some other time. Okay, then here's the clue. When it was abolished in the UK in 1833, it was still legal in America. Don't forget, it was in America until 1865. So it was still legal in America. And then how Britain continued slavery and slave trade, they were no longer loaning money to British merchants. They were now loaning money to American merchants. So the American merchants now, Britain had all this money, but they could not give it to British merchants. They were now loaning this money to American merchants. So the Americans, they were coming over and then loaning money from British banks. And then the British insurance companies were insuring American ships. So anyway, slavery and slave trade still went on. Okay, same procedure. Now our ancestors carried the same procedure they had practiced with Haiti, and they had won. Don't forget, while they were doing all of this, Haiti was already an independent African black nation. First black nation, according to them. According to them, Haiti is the first black nation according to white people, according to Caucasians. But when we do our history, I remember sharing one thing, a document in this country, digging up Britain in the boroughs of London, and they dug up a woman. Her remains, it was funded by the University of Cambridge and the BBC. They dug up a woman, the remains of a black woman, I should say. And carbon dating showed that that woman lived 1,800 years ago. It was black. Everyone was stunned. So they can only say, or they will be saying, blacks, we only came here 400 years ago through slavery and slave trade, where Britain played the most sophisticated part. They never really wanted slavery and slave trade to take place on British soil. So they'll take us to the Caribbeans, we'll work there, and then we'll bring the finished products into Britain. Britain was clever. They used to come up with a scheme. Slaves that were well behaved, they were brought over and they were sold as servants to work in British houses or British homes. That is how prolific these guys dealt with us. All the same scheme in America, because America was vast, a lot of insurrection. Their biggest deal was the North and the South. It was very, very almost impossible to ban slavery and slave trade in the United States. That's why when it was outlawed in 1865, slavery and slave trade still existed in America on the clandestine basis, because you have to rehabilitate them. Maybe it would have been slavery rehabilitation of the Slavery and Slave Trade Act, where they had to rehouse all the slaves. They didn't. They did not. Slavery and slave trade is banned, outlaw. And then all the black people, where did they go? They went to the streets. Some died in the cold. It was so shameful. A vast chunk of them returned back to their slave owners to be able to have where to stay in the slave quarters. Because there was nothing, no compensation, no houses, no land, nothing. Slavery and slave trade was abolished, and then the blacks in the United States, they were just abandoned to fend for themselves. Remember, it was illegal for a slave to own a property. So we never had land, we never had houses, we never had cattle, we had nothing. And then it was outlawed or was abolished. We had nowhere to go. So I'm going back to my merchant. You're going back to your slave owner. A lot of them went back to their so-called masters. Masters in quote, remember? Okay, so now we devised another means. They had so much pressure. We had the war, the North and the South. Everyone was fighting. And then now, it was very, very easy for anyone to recruit the slaves. They had nowhere to go, nowhere to sleep. Hang on, come here, join my battalion, fight with me, and I'll give you your freedom. Even in the War of Independence, when America got their independence, fighting with Britain, that is how so many slaves, it was just so chaotic. This is how confused these people tried to bring us into some form of very, very big confusion. You had blacks or slaves fighting for the Americans. You had blacks or slaves fighting for the British under the same promise. America said, fight for us, you gain your freedom. Britain said, fight for us, you gain your freedom. We're talking that independence, American independence, came on the 4th of July, 1776. Slavery and slave trade was outlawed in America on the 17th of April, 1865. So America had that independence. Slavery and slave trade did not stop. It continued. And then Britain, these guys fought under the British Empire as British soldiers. They were slaves. And then Britain abolished slavery and slave trade 14 July 1833. If we put our figures together now, we do some math, we all gonna see where we're coming from. So they lied. They lied. We understood all of that when, okay, don't forget, they have signed a pact with Haiti. We will control this, we'll control your educational system, meaning they had to teach Haitian children Napoleon Bonaparte. Slavery, how Haiti got her independence, I'm not sure that is being taught in schools over there to this day. I'll do some more research, but I am not sure. Okay. So we had this system now in the United States, the North and the South. And then people, they had available, I would say, power. So they recruited all these blacks and they were burning the country down. America had no choice. America had no choice. So Abraham Lincoln, the US president at the time, with the Congress, they came up with that bullshit, sorry my language, they came up with that utter nonsense, the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment that led to the abolition of slavery and slave trade on American soil. Don't forget, America, Britain, France, and all these giants, they had already signed a pact with Haiti. We will grant your independence. Of course, they didn't grant it. Haiti took it by force. Haiti took it by force. Because they had already signed a pact And then they came up now with this idea. Okay, now it will be a scramble for Africa. The thing is, if we don't scramble for Africa and fragment these guys, their unity is wonderful. They will keep fighting, and even one day we will not exist because they're very organized. They are taking Haiti, and then they're still coming more and more. People could easily recruit them. So this is the situation. Then that is when the 15th Amendment came in. But then there is a clause because the 15th Amendment could not take part again in American soil. Just because slavery and slave trade was abolished there in 1865, they still had their inner tussle. They had their disagreements. They were fighting. A lot of people don't know this. The Berlin Conference. We're talking now 1884, 1885. 1884, between 1884 and 1885. It was the 15th Amendment that gave birth to the Berlin Conference, the scramble for Africa. We've been to Germany, we went to Berlin, and there was this old lady. She showed us around. She took us to the building. The politicians may ultimately sat here. Coffee was served here. She did all the wonderful job. And then we got to a section where she asked, have you got any questions? And then I went, I can understand Berlin was flattened because the Americans came from the west, the Russians came from the east. Apparently the whole of Berlin was bombed. Why was this building spared? I mean, given its location. It's in the heart of town. How did they miss this in 1945? Of course, I'll get back to you on that one. Write your questions and leave them here. We'll try to answer them as soon as we can. So obviously, even when the Russians got into Berlin, there was already a plan. Seeing such as a building that came up with such a sophisticated plot to be able to destroy Africa, partition Africa, and share the Western interest. Don't forget, if you look at the Berlin Conference document, Article 27, it clearly states that whites are superior to blacks, and they have to do everything humanly possible to maintain the status quo, to maintain the superiority. Whites are superior to blacks, and they have to do everything humanly possible to maintain this superiority. White dominance. White must dominate blacks. Article 27. All right. My next question is or was, when you guys were busy demarcating and making your borders and scrambling for Africa, you've showed me where this was a section, the French sat on this section, the Americans, Britain, Germany was here. And then we Africans, we were in here. And she went, no, she answered that one. Africa wasn't represented. I was like, okay. So it takes us back, like during the auctions, where they will say, this is Pharaoh Chio. It's a strong male, 6'3", bulky, it's heavy. And they will just sell me. I've got no say. Maybe my father is just watching me from the stands. My father is just sitting somewhere and just watching, helpless. He hasn't got a say. So that is how we were partitioned. That is how my brother now is a Nigerian. My brother now lives in Chad. My brother now lives in the Congo. You understand something about Africa? We are one. The culture is very, very similar. Slight difference. We dance the same. They perform certain rituals, similar. The food, similar. We have some slight changes, but trust me, it's not much. And then we had that. They had the demarcation, and that's how the new Africa now came in. Though the Germans, since it was done in Germany, in Berlin, most of them had that added task of actually drawing the boundaries. And then you had King Leopold. in Belgium. I'm talking now shortly after the Berlin Conference. I'm talking 1891. You had King Leopold. Now they came up again with this systematic plot, systematic ploy, you want to call it, because they could not deal with us Africans. We were too many. And then we were so organized. You can't believe we fought slavery and slave trade. All of a sudden, this guy speaks Hausa, this guy is Fulani, this guy is Igbo, that guy speaks Ntebele, this one speaks Shona. We don't understand how these guys will organize and then talk to each other and then be able to enact such a siege. And then Leopold was like, I'll get back to you on that one. He studied Africa so well. And then he said to his missionaries, the best thing you have to do to Africans, them religion. Don't forget, during slavery and slave trade times, slaves were not allowed to read. Reading was an offense punishable by death. The only slaves that could read and the only book they had to read was the Bible. The Bible was the only book that was allowed in slave quarters only. And then the only time blacks could sit with whites in the same building was during service. And then obviously they will teach a black person how to read, and then sometimes they will read some scriptures, and there's this white person that will interpret, or a white person will read it, and then a black person will interpret. That's how they were trying to make the system. Of course, we had verses where they had to, like Ephesians 6:5, 2 Peter 2:18. It was talking about how slaves should obey their masters with same slaves should obey their masters with same fear and tremble, same way they will obey Jesus Christ. Same thing in 2 Peter 2:18. It's in the Bible. So biblically, it's there. So that's why they had to give us this book. Anyway, that's their God. And those in slavery and slave trade. Let's not even talk how slavery and slave trade was born, where there was one Bishop Bartolomeo de las Casas that had a dream, and in a dream, God told him to enslave black people. So he left Spain, took his boat, went to Rome, met the Pope, and then the Pope gave him the papal backing. That's how slavery and slave trade was born. Officially, it became legal because they were doing it in clandestine, hidden, in a covert way. So when Bishop Bartolomeo de las Casas went to Rome, explained his dream to the Pope, and the Pope blessed him and gave him the backing, and then that's fine. Slavery and slave trade was born. It became legal. So, okay, Leopold now said to them, these people in Congo, look at it this way. A lot of Africans, sometimes when you say this, they agitate. It's like you're not necessarily picking on their countries, but it's what it is. Okay? Let's look at the ethnic groups in Africa, or the countries in Africa. You've got Nigeria. They say Nigeria is 213 million. We more than that in that stretch of the world. We more than that. They keep hiding. We more than that. Congo is 98 million. We more than that. Nigeria and Congo happens to be the richest country in Africa in terms of mineral deposits. No country in Africa is richer than the Congo. All the cell phones you use today, all the cell phones, they came up with these statistics. It was 100%. The product there comes from the Congo. And they said, I attended this seminar, and then this chap took his phone out. It was an Asian man from Japan. He lifted his cell phone and said, each time you use a cell phone, you endorsing child labor. And then everybody went, because they have to make kids work for like 12 hours digging, trying to get, I don't know if it was bauxite or cobalt, what is used for your mobile phone. We all know the situation of the uranium and their atom bombs and all of that. It all comes from the Congo. I remember someone asked a question, so are you saying Congo is responsible for Hiroshima and Nagasaki because the uranium came from Congo? Anyway, that was funny. And then, okay, but Congo is the poorest country. These are facts. Congo is a very, very poor, it's one of the poorest countries in Africa. Look at Nigeria. Nigeria is the richest country in Africa. It's got the poorest standard of living. And then you'll be like, because the answer is very, very simple. From that part of the world, we don't think. There are more churches in Lagos alone than the whole of Europe and America. Nowadays, we need schools, we need libraries, we need factories. Why are you having churches? The white man brought the church. Do we have this amount of churches in Birmingham? No. No. Look at my radius. Maybe 40 miles, 50 miles, 4 churches. Go to Nigeria or go to Bamenda where I was born. No factory, 500 churches. There are more Nigerian medical doctors in the United States more than in Nigeria. And then I did another research one day. I was talking to this politician from Nigeria. And the 2 churches in Nigeria, I think I'll remember the names. One's got 40,000 branches. You got the figures right, 40,000. And the other one has got 30,000. So 2 churches, they've got 70,000 churches or branches. Just 2, 70,000. Okay. So now all the same, there was a systematic plan to Christianize the Igbos and the Congolese, or people from the Congo. Because these were the regions, or these are the regions with a high concentration of Black people. Don't forget, Cameroon is 26 million. Ghana is 26 million. Nigeria, they say, is 213 million. Nigeria is over 300 million. Congo is, they say, is 98 million. Believe it, Congo is over 150 million. They didn't bother about South Africa because a few months later, the Dutch missionaries under the wars, they went to South Africa and they Christianized that part of the country. But the 2 they had to take, the Igbos and the Congo, these 2 regions. And then they said, I remember King Leopold in his infamous statement said, don't take religion to these people. Spirituality, these people, they're very, very spiritual. Christianize them. If you Christianize them, they're doomed. And they will get to a point where we don't need to speak on our behalf. They will fight for us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid this is the situation Africa is in today. Okay, so when all that happened, they said they had won. They talk about Hitler and the atrocities. King Leopold alone killed over 8 million Congolese. Over 8 million Congolese. Some school of thought they're saying 12. Okay, let's say between 8 and 12 million Congolese that he killed. Nobody talks about that. That's not a Holocaust. Slavery and slave trade lasted 400 to 600 years. To them, it's not a Holocaust. Hitler ruled Germany for 11 years. And then everyone is talking about that as the Holocaust. What about 400 years? They compensated the Jews. Israel was mandated on the 7th of June, 1948. Israel became a state on the 28th of June, 1948. And in 1953, their compensation went through. Today, they run Shell, Mobil, Exxon, McDonald's, KFC, all the banks. And then we say they're hardworking. They're God's chosen people. Can these people compensate us? A lot of people say no, because they haven't got enough money to pay us. I keep saying they would. We had 20 million pounds in 2013 for the Mau Mau uprising in the 50s in Kenya. Kenya took Her Majesty's government, Britain, to court. And then Britain paid 20 million in 2013. Okay, when slavery and slave trade was abolished in this country in 1833, they had to compensate the merchants or the farmers, or the slave traders. And then in 1834, 3,600 names came up. You got the figures right. 3,600 slave owners, farmers, merchants turn up for a compensation. And Britain took a loan. We only finished paying that loan in 2015. So slavery and slave trade was abolished in the UK. They compensated the oppressors. The oppressed had nothing. Imagine they're talking about this Holocaust, and then the IMF or the United Nations is compensating Germany and Russia for killing the Jews. That's what these organizations, that's what these people, they've done to us. So they compensated the Red Indians in the United States. They don't pay land tax. Red Indians don't pay land tax. They class them as the original settlers and the original inhabitants of the United States. They were never enslaved. Well, they tried enslaving them, but they were too weak. They were not adaptable to carry that form of work. Only black people could do it. So they enslaved us. And then they've compensated the Caucasians and they've compensated the Red Indians, claiming that's their original part of the world. So they are exempt from land tax. We had nothing. Okay? So they've had their compensation in 1834. 3,600 names came up in this country. And then King Leopold in 1891 on strict orders for his missionaries to Christianize Congo and Nigeria, because it had the biggest concentration of black people. So they Christianized them and they Islamized the northern part of Nigeria. That's why we see the highest number of Christians not in Africa, in the world, are Nigerians. You go to Lagos, you'll be alarmed. The churches literally, they're across each other. You see, when a pastor is coming to church on Sunday, it's a convoy. They say, oh, you never told me the president is visiting your state. They say, no, it's not the president, it's man of God. They don't even call them pastors now. It's man of God, prophet of God. So anyway, they scramble for Africa, and then this is it. We will call you, they change all our names. That's why Kemet, Al-Kebulan, Ethiopia stayed though, and then all our African names gone. And then that's when we became Cameroonians, Nigerians, Senegalese, and then they brought us all these names and all these names. All right. And then the First World War alongside, like here, they're talking about the Second World War. It was fought in Europe. Okay. They don't tell you, or they don't tell us. They had to take that tactical unit in North Africa. They won't tell us, to be able to siphon the supply, to be able to fuel their aircraft and fuel their tanks. They had to take this stretch around Algeria. They had to take this stretch around Egypt. And then they bundled us. Don't forget, back then, even as Africa had been partitioned, we were overseas trustee territories. We were trustee territories. We weren't even countries. We were trustee territories. Meaning, France could be, okay, this is my part. The Germans had chunk until after the Second World War, where they lost almost everything. So they had to seize all the German territories, because Germany had a lot of territories in Africa. Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, and then they had to give this territory, where Cameroon was a bit tactical, because they had to give Cameroon, they had to split us into two. Part of us went to the British, and then part went to the French. The biggest part went to the French. Okay, our agitations continue. But after the Second World War of 1945, we're talking of 8 May 1945, the French General de Gaulle, after the war, and France, they designed our money. Cameroon got her independence on the 1st of January 1960, but they had designed our money, the franc CFA, in 1945, after the Second World War. Tell me, is this a coincidence? Tell me, is this not a sophisticated plot? Is this not a sophisticated plan? And then I remember on another Pan-African panel, I asked one guy, There is no country on earth that is rich from using another country's money. It doesn't happen. And I said, if you can show me any rich country, they're rich, but they're using the currency of another nation, I'll give you guys £100. To this day, no one can take that money. So they designed our legal tender or our money, the CFA, and the full meaning of CFA is Communauté Financière d'Afrique. That's they are financing their African territories. 1945, that was designed. Anyway, we fought the French, and on the 26th of December 1959, General de Gaulle, I'll talk Cameroon, this is really where I come from. General de Gaulle of France met with the first president of Cameroon, Amadou Ahidjo, and they signed the French Cooperation Agreement. Don't forget, they had already signed this with Haiti in 1804. A system where we will grant you your independence, but we will control your finances, we will control your infrastructure, we will control your school. You cannot reshuffle your cabinet. We can pick and decide who we want to be president. In an advent where the president is missing in your country, the president of France might rule while you go through all of this. So our president signed that on the 26th of December 1959. And then on the 1st of January, Cameroon gained her independence. Independence in quote, where the French, they control our curriculum, they control our money, they market our goods, market and process our goods, they control our army, control our judiciary, technically everything. And then we signed that independence. Okay, back then, should you go to a football pitch or in the town center and say, listen, I need Africans to come here with a degree? Very few people would turn up. Okay, this same the French Cooperation Agreement is signed between France and 14 African countries. For technically, I've seen this document, the only changes, let's say, is the president between France, Charles de Gaulle, and Amadou Ahidjo of Cameroon. France, Charles de Gaulle, and the other president of Guinea or Chad, in that order. France is capable of holding down 14 African nations. So Cameroon's president talked about this in 1972 and 1973. And when he won this agreement ratified. He complained in 1972. He complained in 1973. It was ratified, but as we speak, because Cameroon, our authorities, I think, is same politically. They really don't want. I'm trying to get the original one and what was changed. Cameroon, they're not really playing ball. They don't really want to give me that and all of that. And then we signed that. So we see you taking it all the way from slavery and slave trade, and then it's hatched now to colonization. You're colonized. We're still slaves. I cannot print my own money. I cannot market my own products. I cannot be in control of my judiciary. That's why you see today, politically, in Cameroon, arrested, and then Cameroonians, they'll stage a protest in France. You don't know if it's sheer stupidity or they know what they're doing, in a sense that they understand that the French president is equally the de facto president of Cameroon. So you put these guys at two ends. You don't know if they're smart or you don't know if they're idiots. But all the same, any way you look at it, they have a point. Because they can say, okay, it says the president of France might intervene and then save a situation where the decision from the president of France can supersede that of the president of Cameroon. So we're having all of that. And then Africans now, they're thinking, imagine one day I said to someone, we're having an argument. Some Africans, they like to come up and challenge Africans. I said, Kwame Nkrumah talked about Pan-Africanism and African Union in 1957. Europe had their European Union in 1979. Something Kwame Nkrumah had talked about 22 years earlier. Who is smart? Who is smart? Again, Kwame Nkrumah talked about African Union in 1957. The European Union was formed in 1979. So you see how we Africans, we've been agitating. Okay, we go down, these are the hidden pacts. And then you conduct another research, and then you'll be thinking, how come Africans or black women, no disrespect to our black queens there, we're very dysfunctional in the diaspora? Well, in England, we don't see Asian single mothers like we see our black sisters and our black queens. Is it a system? They say an African man, he wants you to go to work, come back and cook for him. Okay, maybe that's the problem. But I will say to our sisters and some of our brothers, it's the same system in the UK that the Asians operate under. In the UK, with that, there is no law for the Asians and a law for us Africans. I used to challenge that. And then how are we this dysfunctional? It's a system. White people, we see them. They're single mothers. They're not distressed. They're not this dysfunctional. People just come up and say it's a system. Question everything. That's how I unearthed the Toronto Protocol. We will make black families dysfunctional. We will make black families, I think I will share this Toronto Protocol with Sister Shanice, and then she should be able to, it will reach you guys. I'll share the Toronto Protocol. We will make black families dysfunctional. How are we going to make black families dysfunctional? One, volunteer acts with the judiciary, our social justice system, the social services, our police. In the UK, America, Belgium, wherever, how they deal with domestic violence between two Caucasians and two Africans or two black persons is totally different. Totally different. Totally. Because they have their systematic, it's in the Toronto Protocol. We make black families dysfunctional. Of course, they understand. Most often when there is stabbings, we understand, or gang culture, we've got, I remember there was this Caucasian guy, he came up to me and said, I only love black women. Oh, and I was like, okay, fair enough. In this day and age, you're free to go with whoever you want. And then I asked him, but why? He turned to me and said, I only date black women because I don't have to go through their fathers. I don't have to go through their dads. So you got this white person telling me most black children come from single parentage. He told me straight in my face. Yes. So obviously, if Nelson Mandela, may so rest in peace, is saying poverty is man-made, it is. It is. How can the Congo be the richest country on earth in terms of mineral deposits? It's the poorest country in Africa. How can Nigeria be the highest exporter of oil, the richest country in Africa? It's got the poorest standard of living. How can Nigeria, the richest country in Africa, competing? You have Nigerian citizens go to Yemen. You have Nigerian citizens go to Lebanon. Nigeria is way, way richer than these countries. Way, way richer than these countries. All right? That is Central and West Africa. Let's move down south. We're talking Zimbabwe and Robert Mugabe. May he so rest in peace. The most educated president ever to have lived, Robert Mugabe. He had eight degrees, I think 4 masters, something like that. Okay, when he had his agreement, Rhodesia, when they had their agreement with the British Empire, it wasn't until 1979. I remember on the BBC One back then, it used to be Mugabe, killing of women and children, killing his own people, torturing his own people. I enjoyed his charisma. I was like, he was the only African president that would challenge. I mean, called Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. That Gordon Brown is a small boy. He used to do his. Gordon Brown is a small boy. I was like, this man has got the guts. Why is he always talking to the war leaders like this? War leaders, as they call themselves. No, there must be something about this man. That's when I did my research. Robert Mugabe, a very clever man. Before Zimbabwe gained her independence, I think it's the 20th of April 1980. Bob Marley performed that occasion. 20th of April 1980, Zimbabwe gained her independence from Britain. Prior to that, they had a Lancaster House Agreement. Most Zimbabweans, they don't like you to talk about this. It makes them sick. I can understand history is toxic at times. Signed in Britain. I think it's equally in December, but theirs, I think, is the 29th of December, 1979. Mugabe, a very clever man, he gave them a mandate. Okay, fine. It was no longer like their French cooperation agreement, which Cameroonians, they would challenge you about it. I said, listen, this same General de Gaulle took that French cooperation agreement to the Algerians for them to sign in 1953. The Algerians looked at it and said, hang on, we're not signing this. What do you mean? So if we sign this, how are we independent then? They went, no, you just need to sign here. No. The Algerians weren't stupid. You mean we will be using your money? The Algerians asked. And France was agitating as well. It gave birth to the French-Algerian War from 1954 until the 2nd of November 1962. So the agreement did not hold in Algeria. So some people are saying, but Cameroon and we guys, we could look at what Burkina Faso and Mali they're doing. They're canceling all of that. They're canceling all of that. The president of Cameroon at one point said, I'm not honoring this agreement no more. We're changing it. Robert Mugabe, a very clever man, he said, okay, if you're telling me all this, listen, we have to put a time limit. Because the independence was for them to pave way for the white farmers. Yes, we'll have your independence, but you will not touch land reforms. And then Mugabe was like, he looked at it, it was a bit messy. Don't forget, Mugabe was locked up by the same British Empire and was in prison for 10 years prior to that independence. He went, okay, yes, we'll sign this for 20 years. Okay. In 1999, President Mugabe came to England. And then their then Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, he went to Tony Blair. It's coming up to our, what are you doing about our agreement? We've got an agreement here. This is the Lancaster House. You say they will have this, but the land reforms, we can only redo the land reforms after 20 years. It's coming up to your time. Your time is here. So what are we doing? Tony Blair said to Mugabe, and I quote, it's a Thatcherian thing. I don't recognize that. Don't forget, Mugabe signed the Lancaster House with Margaret Thatcher. And just so all Africans know, a president will never, or a king will never sign a document as an individual. You don't say the French cooperation agreement was signed between General de Gaulle and Naijo. You can say that just to facilitate understanding. But it was signed between France and Cameroon. It's only according to Caucasians that Margaret Thatcher signed a document that became a Thatcherian document. And then on their way back to Harare, Mugabe then asked one of his proteges, is this how stupid we are? You mean we Africans, we will leave Africa, come to Europe, and ask Europeans about our land reforms? Who even set up this meeting? He was shocked. That's how their debacle started. I said, we don't even need permission. You mean you come to Europe and you ask a white man permission on how to manage your land in Africa? How many black people own farms in Britain? Mugabe asked. And then he went down. A lot of people today, even some Zimbabweans, they're saying he took the land and only gave it to his people. And then Zimbabwe, that was a bread basket, breadwinner, was supplying food to all the Southern African nations, now unfortunately unable to feed. Okay, I'll say this. Mugabe did not take the land. It's like when you're trying to apply for a job, there is what in human resources they call self-select. They'll put it down. We're looking for this A, B, C. The list can be up to 15. The reason they do all that is in order not to have that process cumbersome. They don't want too many applications because processing them is time and resources, time and money. So what they do is they outline everything as much as they can. So what they call self-select. So somebody might just read it and say, no, sorry, this is not for me. This is not for me. This is not for me. In that way, you cut out too many people that will apply, will do unnecessary applications. So anyway, Mugabe went back to his country and he said to them, if you acquire land from between this time and this period, you have to bring your documents for verification. So he instigated that self-select process. A thief is guilty, no matter how you put it. Take a thief to court. Let's say that is the judge. You will still see his face. They will not be confident. They will not want to come to court. They'll be like, Dad. But if you're the judge, why do I need to come to court? They will not want all of that. That's how the whites went into self-exile. There was no law or order like what we had in Uganda in the 70s that excluded the Asians from Uganda. No, there was nothing like that in Zimbabwe. Mugabe was going through the land reforms. We have that now in South Africa. I guarantee you, Malema is going to do it. If not, all you need to do is educate our people. Tell them. Let's look at South Africa now. The population of South Africa is about 58 million. And we have around 5.6 million whites. And then we have, yes, about 53 million blacks. That's the population of South Africa. I'll just say something about South Africa because we're talking today about the sophisticated nature of white supremacy colonization. So you can ask yourself, how can a small population of whites in South Africa enact apartheid on our people in South Africa for so long? What were we doing? I'll answer that today. Don't forget, each time there was an uprising in South Africa, Britain would send tanks, Britain and America. By the way, the CIA arrested Mandela on the 2nd of August 1962. Nelson Mandela was arrested on the 2nd of August 1962. And it was not done by the South Africans. It was done by the CIA because Mandela was the people were loyal to him. They protected him. And then the South African apartheid government now sought help. So Kennedy was dining with Martin Luther King, talking about equality. Because don't forget, in the United States, orders from the CIA, orders come from the president. There are certain things only the president can give orders to for military action. Let's not be mistaken. Imagine when Bin Laden was killed in that building, as they tell us, only Obama could order the strike. So if an intelligence to arrest Madiba, only the US president could give such an order. Who was the president at the time? Fitzgerald Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And then this guy would dine with Martin Luther King Jr., talking about bringing blacks, pushing for blacks to be able to vote in the United States. But at the same time, he had ordered for the arrest of Madiba. So these are the people we call war leaders. We can never, ever, and should never, ever trust them. Okay. When you go to the point we're talking about South Africa now, where 87% of whites own the wealth of South Africa, blacks only 11%. Same thing with land tenureship. 87% of the land in South Africa is owned by whites, while 11% is owned by blacks. And then I've given you the population, 5.6 million whites, 83 million blacks. This is unacceptable. Okay. Our brothers in that stretch, they understood the game. They say, if we keep disagreeing, fighting amongst ourselves, these tribes and this tribe, and making it a tribal thing, whites will always be at the helm in South Africa. So there was collective agitation, which is what we Africans, because now what I do understand is Nigeria is having a problem now, like the Biafras, they want to create their own state. Cameroon is having the same, where I'm from. The English-speaking part of Cameroon, they're fighting for their independence. And then when you say to them, it's a language war. English is not even our language. So they're saying the English part, they've been marginalized. And then I'll use Nigeria as a comparator and say, okay, the whole of Nigeria speaks English. So why do they want to separate them? We'll come to that. All right. So, but anyway, in 1993, where they had done everything, they didn't want Madiba to stand in as the president because they knew any black person was to win. And then it got to a point they were so scared of revenge. I've put another challenge. Any clergyman from the Caucasian world, if you can show me the greatest forgiveness ever done to mankind, what Nelson Mandela did in South Africa, it will not be £100, it will be £500. We see white people, you see crimes committed in the 60s, crimes committed in the 50s, they still arrest them. An 80-year-old person, you give them 30 years jail term. And then the thing is, why can't you just forgive them? You talk about forgiveness. You've printed your Bibles, you've distributed it all over the world. Why can't you forgive them? Madiba forgave you. Madiba forgave the United Kingdom, France, Germany, United States. Everyone was forgiven. Okay, anyway, there is something sophisticated here a lot of people don't understand. We're still talking really about colonialism and how it's done more harm to us. It's never a coincidence. Before, let's say in the 90s, in the late 90s, if you asked asylum in the United Kingdom, the government used to provide you with a house and you had money every week. Okay, and then people used to be, oh, Britain's got the best social system in the world. Okay, cool. I was like, how come they've got houses? I mean, you just say, I'm running from persecution, I'm running from this, and the next minute they put you in a house, same day. And they give you money, same day. Okay, which is cool. And then, oh, the Brits, they're wonderful. English people, they're so polite, they're so nice, they understand culture, they're tolerant, they deal with it. Wrong. In 1992, Madiba was released on the 20th of May 1990. That's when he was released from prison. Imagine from 1962, he was incarcerated. 1962, he was released in 1990. On the 20th of May, 1990. Okay, that's cool. They knew it. Madiba will be president. They knew Nelson Mandela was to be the first black president of South Africa. Okay. What was their greatest worry? Revenge. Revenge. Don't forget the Soweto massacre on the 16th of June 1976. White officers stormed a black school and killed black children. So that was worse. We celebrate it as the Day of the African Child. That was still fresh in our memory. They knew Madiba was to win. And on the 14th of November 1993, South Africa gave up their nuclear weapons. We're giving up our nuclear weapons. We don't want to be part of this no more. Of course, Madiba said, okay, they didn't want it to pass to black hands, but they knew their time was up. South Africa will go under black leadership. It was so eminent. Okay. Listen carefully, lads. Australia, United States, Netherlands, or Holland. The UK built 5,800 houses. You got my figures right. 5,800. Australia built 2,763. Australia built 2,763. Holland built 8,000. Don't forget, the whites we see in South Africa today, most of them, they're Dutch origin. They come from Holland. And they went into that stretch of in 1528. They've been there for a very long time. A lot of us don't know. It was 1528 they were in Africa. 1528. They can claim some legitimacy, haven't been there for a very long time. But you just have to be fair. You just have to be fair. Make the laws fair for everyone. Okay? So now, Mandela, before president in the waiting. You know, when you win an election, there is a cool-off period. And then before you are installed, it's called president in the waiting. So Mandela was already a president in the waiting. Most of the whites in South Africa had left. Most of them. They're gone to Australia. But the ones that were supposed to come to this country, the United Kingdom, they were waiting. So Mandela first went to Australia and promised the whites there, I'll grant all of you amnesty. They were not sure. They thought it was a prank. They wanted documented evidence. Mandela said, listen, I am telling you, I will be the president of South Africa. No one can be higher than me. So if I'm telling you, it's from the president. But they weren't sure. The Queen of England was shocked. Don't forget, they had 5,800 houses in this country. 5,800 ready to take all the whites into this country. All of them. That partition it, that share them. Part was to go to Australia, part was to go to Holland, and then the other chunk was to come here. And then Madiba said, listen, we will share this country. We will live side by side. It was as simple as that. And then the guys were like, are you sure? Madiba put it in writing. And the whites in Australia, they returned. And then that was when the news came up. There's an amnesty. They had pardoned everyone. And then there was a housing boom in England. They had 5,800 houses they had built to absorb the Caucasian population from South Africa. And then now Mandela had granted them amnesty. And then, okay, imagine somebody left England, went to the Gambia or Senegal, captured your ancestors, put them in ships, overloaded ships, took them to America, took them to Guyana, took them to Jamaica. And then this same person is all of a sudden, they're building houses to take black people into Britain, especially in this country, England. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that. So once they had that, because everything that is glorious about Caucasians, I researched it. So how come these people, they've got lots of houses? They used to just dish out back then, because now the population is kind of ramped now. And then you'll be thinking, how can they just do this? There was a housing boom in England in the late 90s because Mandela forgave all the whites. So all the houses, they were empty. So they had to put these houses into use. And then shortly after that, Tony Blair came to power and then made this Freedom of Information Act and declassified thing, and the United Kingdom was open. It wasn't open. They had 5,800 empty houses, for God's sake. So these houses had to be occupied. And that's how they opened the country, for these houses to be occupied so people can run them and then pay the taxes and then pay them land taxes, which we call here council tax, and all those bollocks. So there is no way these people can really just come and then tell us all these things. And then another thing again, I see some of our brothers and sisters, they go to church, they come up with these things, Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace was written by John Newton, a British slave merchant, in 1773. He captured slaves, took them from the Gambia, was bringing them over to this country. There was turbulence. And then that's when he wrote that thing and they were singing. So we Africans, we cannot be singing and looking at these people today. It's kind of painful. So we see how we've walked our way and then everything was planned. It's never a coincidence. And then follow the training. Like if you're a police officer, you are taught nothing is a coincidence. Nothing. Follow that part of the training. Follow that part of your knowledge. Question things. Like I was just talking about this housing boom. Why would Britain all of a sudden be building houses and then bringing black people into the UK? No, it wasn't built for us. It was built for the whites in South Africa. They didn't turn up. So they had to somehow still make it the spiral, make it spin and generate that money. They wanted that money back into their treasury. So it's just a situation where we Africans, we have to congregate. We have to be gregarious. We have to come together. We have to be tolerant. Forget about our political affiliations. Best we need to do is we need to teach each other. We learn from each other. Always have a platform or a mechanism where we can learn something. Like I was saying to Sister Shanice, I'll share that Toronto protocol, and I can see some very wonderful comments they're coming in. And I would say it's been, I think I've at least more than an hour. It's been great, you guys having me. I don't know if Sister Shanice would I be able to take some questions? Sister Shanice, you have to unmute yourself. I don't know. I cannot. Yeah.
Yes, I'm behind the scenes. I'm having internet challenges, but you're doing a great job. Please do continue, my brother. And I'm posting comments. If you decide you want to respond to any of them, then please do. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for having me.
So let's find some of the comments.
All right, that's fine. Okay, there is Kwame. Sorry, if I don't pronounce your name. There is Brother Kwame is saying, Baba Bob Mugabe is the best. Of course, of course. Thank you so much, Brother Kwame. Yes, Afi Jamo, my sister. There was another thing. what we Africans should equally know is each time there is an African Union, the European Union sponsors the African Union. The question we should be asking ourselves is why? Each time Africans want to unite, Europe is in panic because they know if we unite, we can bring back what Gaddafi had in store. Because we're walking towards that direction now where Africa has to be for Africans. That's a very good comment. Thank you, Sister Afrijamo. Oh, yes. My brother S.A. Smith, he said in the US, they make families dysfunctional. Yes, you are correct. You just have to understand the way police will deal with domestic violence for white couple is different from how they'll tackle it with a black couple. And then the white couple, they will get more support, which the black family will not have. I still remember this infamous comment, Brother Kwame, Blair, keep your England and I'll keep my Zimbabwe, in quotes, Robert Mugabe. Yes, that was a great one. Oh, I think this is Papa Chizi. I think this is for Mugabe to dwell where in his resting place. So maybe he's watching over us. We miss him. Yes, he was indeed the true lion. It was the greatest. I remember even him when he addressed the United Nations. He challenged them and even said, Berlusconi. I never knew Berlusconi loved war. I thought he loved women. That was, he just cracked the whole of the UN. Blue Zodiac. To be fair, I've been a Pan-Africanist for over 13 years now. I've done an extensive research. I've visited most countries, even for some ancient finds like Egypt. I've been to Israel. I could not see any finds in Israel. And then I've been to Europe, like finding for things, looking for the Berlin Conference. And I've been in this country trying to get why William Wilberforce abolished slavery and slave trade. Sister Afrijamo, because I always take time to read. Yes, Brother Kwame, I've come across this. Yes, a lot of people say it was a sellout. I remember the Stevie Tampe murder, a young boy, and he was accused. I think Winnie Mandela was tied to it. So Mandela actually accompanied Winnie to court. So I was like, but Madiba, if you forgave the whites, why didn't you forgive Winnie? To an extent, yes, you have a point there. I've seen people saying it was a sellout, for not touching land reforms, and then whites are still the richest in South Africa. Yes. Well, Rishon, the original Britons were bronze skin and 20, but the best way to challenge them is to take their history 3,000 years back, where we had the pyramids, we live in houses, and they live in caves. Because if you watch British channel, most often they're only talking about the Second World War and how they defeated Hitler. But we say to them, so okay, let's say before 1914, First World War, what is your history? They really cannot really cover that with us. Yes, that's a good point. It always comes like that, Norman Henderson. You know, it's like how some people will say a prophet is never recognized in his hometown. I remember Julius Malema, when he started, I think they shoved him down. I think someone advised him to take up courses. So he went to uni and then came back. Now it's a firepower. It's a firepower. And then he said, any agreement you sign with Madiba, that was with him. There will be a new signing. But for white people to own 87% of the world in South Africa and blacks only 11%, given that there are 53.5 million blacks in South Africa and only 5.6 million whites in South Africa, that is totally unacceptable. It's just a matter of time. That in its own will equally collapse. Well, I can say that I can see that Malanga, I hope I pronounce your name well, a project been in parliament nearly 10 years doing, yes, sometimes it's like coming from Africa is very, very difficult. He's a parliamentarian. And then you have to understand as a president, there are certain things you can veto. But there are certain things that certain orders that will come from the president. Sometimes they don't even need to vote. Sometimes they don't need to consider. It comes in like an order. I think if Malema is president, he would do well. Robert Mugabe took the land. I see Malema as a radical president that would do same. I see him doing same. So let's give him time. I'll totally agree with you on this one, Brother Kwame. 100%. I'll follow you on this one. I just hope when he's president, he should not be compromised. Yes, I totally agree with this one. Yes, Henderson, and with you, it shouldn't change the course because at the end of the day, we've seen that land tenureship disparity. We literally, blacks there own nothing. So the whites own everything with a very small population. Okay, ACB2K. I remember in one of my research or one of my studies, because I always give recommendations like today, I'm saying we Africans should be gregarious, always coming together. And then I said, I think the whole of Africa, they need a collective push for Nigeria. Because sometimes if they came up with a systematic plan to Christianize Nigeria and the Congo, then we too can come up with our own plan to free Nigeria. So equally, if we free Nigeria, the rest of Africa will stand. Because you see, what Nigeria is doing now, they're exporting these churches to other countries. So you can be a pastor, but no matter how smart or prolific you are, you can never do it more than Nigerians. So the Nigerians are now, instead of exporting their wealth or riches or companies to other African countries, they're exporting these churches. There's no African, there won't be any African country you won't see a church run by Nigerians. It's practically impossible. It doesn't happen. So they're very well established with that, but it's ruining our community and then it's killing Africans 100%. I'm a Pan-Africanist with the biggest truth. If something is good for us, I'll recommend. I'll say this is what we need to do. I won't be biased. So if Christianity was good for us, I'll tell Africans, let's be Christians. We cannot follow what enslaved us. We shouldn't. Yes, keep the comments coming. I can give you about 15 more minutes. Should be about 10 o'clock in the UK in 15 minutes. Yes, not only him, George Bush Sr., they all call him a terrorist. David Cameron was seen in his youth marching with a placard in London, calling Mandela a terrorist. They all did. Margaret Thatcher, yes. Margaret Thatcher really sponsored apartheid. It was Margaret Thatcher when she became the British PM in 1979. Yes, she was going through all that housing boom in the UK. Malanga, it's a good point. This is what we're talking about, African unity. This is what we're talking about, African unity. If I just leave this for a bit and then move to Cameroon, and then I used to say, okay, the former president of Cameroon, he died in exile in Senegal. And then I'll be like, our current president now has been in power for 40 years. And I'll say, how can the president of Cameroon now honor an agreement signed between France and Cameroon? And then he will not honor an agreement he signed with the former president. So yes, this is what I'm saying. We Africans, we need to come together and then make sure the things we discuss or the things we want to do should benefit the common African. This Mr. Wilfred Ambrosina, it appears that this planet has been infiltrated by a non-human species. I don't really know how to comment on this, but if I see what you mean, like, if we say like we Caucasians, they've made all the laws and the rules. They've set up their white supremacist organization.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting through the comments. There's
Yes.
one also. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it was just someone was saying we Africans shouldn't be falling for that. South Africa did a great start. They fighting for oppression. It was a principle that all the blacks in that country they came and then they fought oppression. Make no mistake, they did not just fight only the whites in South Africa. They fought the British Empire, they fought the French, they fought the Germans, they fought the United States, and we won. So we will keep fighting and we will keep winning. Yes, Malanga, we cannot be making the same mistakes. So we're getting sophisticated now. We're clever. We're doing a lot of bypasses. We know how to understand rules and enactments. Yes, Mr. IC3 Black Race Coaches Toronto Protocol. I will share that I'll send that across to Sister Shanice, and then she'll do a publication online. You can see the Toronto Protocol. I was very, very shocked myself. That is the document that says we should keep blacks dysfunctional. And you'll see racism in the police. And then in one of the modalities of how they should keep blacks dysfunctional, they mention their police force. So yes, that's a document worth looking at. And then the French Cooperation Agreement, the Lancaster House Agreement, all these hidden pacts, I will have it sent to Sister Shanice, and then you can request for a copy and it can be emailed out to you guys. Thank you, Sonia Bell. It's well, I can't just take all the credit. There's some great other teachers out there, but if you say this, I will say thanks. And another thing, knowledge is not really good if it's not shared. If knowledge is not spread, it's a waste. So if you unearth something, the best way is for you to share it or for you to spread it, so it keeps going around to our people. They will see it, and their time will come, and then everyone gets emancipated at some point. Sometimes it only takes something to trigger. Yes, the Arab conquest in the north in 649 AD, where the Arabs they conquered the north of Africa, and then we had this the Jamaican Jankro channel. Sorry, I don't know. Yes, the Arab conquest in 649 AD. Nigerians don't want to be free. Of course, to be fair, ABC2K. According the recommendations I have for Nigeria is for them to close down the churches. If they can close down the churches, they will be able to think, because the belief system in Nigeria, sorry for using this word, is very stupid. A pastor is telling you tomorrow you ride a car. You haven't even worked. You don't even have a bank account, or you have a bank account, there is no money in it. How will you ride a car in the morning? God works in mysterious ways. We've never seen this mystery. And then we have congregated all over Nigeria. It's mushrooming all over Nigeria. It seems to be, imagine Africa is the poorest continent, but it's producing the richest pastors. I mean, we are poor in terms of their wealth and money, but Africa is producing the richest pastors. It's totally unacceptable.
Yes, let me add myself back to the screen. You have been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much. I know you've sailed solo for most of the show. As I said, I've been having some internet challenges behind the scene. It's been freezing some of the time. I wasn't even hearing what was being said. It was cutting in and out. But thank you so much. A lot of comments from our audience as well. Still more comments there as well. But you touched on so much. You covered, hundreds of years of our history in this presentation that you did today. Thank you so much. I was wondering how you was going to cover all of the topics that you said that you were going to be addressing, and you managed to do so. there's been a few comments in the chat about religion as well, and how religion has really captured the minds of us as Africans. It's taken us out of our true African mind. And as you say, we find ourselves, in these churches singing and dancing for new cars. And as you said, we don't even have a bank account, don't even know how to drive, but think, a white God from heaven is actually going to go poof, and a new car is going to turn up on your lawn. This is the same God that we were praying to for hundreds of years, to take us out of our enslavement and out of bondage. And it didn't happen. It was the freedom fighters, the liberation fighters, the revolutionists that took us out of bondage. Let's never ever forget that. And I think the only correction I'd like to make to your presentation, my dear brother, is that they didn't take slaves out of Africa. They enslaved Africans.
They took doctors, architects. You're right.
Yes, they took doctors,
And made
architects,
made them slaves.
That's right. That's right, my brother. And so, we use our own description and terminology, and not theirs. As they do, they try to, demonize us and give the impression that, the people who they took were subhuman and less than. But no, the truth is that they were the ones who were subhuman. They were the ones, who were committing these heinous crimes. You talked about the millions of Africans that was murdered by Leopold, millions of Africans who during the years of enslavement who were murdered. And let's also remember, because we're all doing the research, and there's a lot of information now to confirm that not only did they take Africans from the continent and move them to the Caribbean and the Americas, but they also emptied Europe of all of their Africans as well. They committed genocide and murdered millions of Africans, and millions more. They transported them via England to various Caribbean countries and the Americas. And that's a part of the history that they have covered up very successfully for many, many years. And they have most of us, giving the narrative that suggests that, we weren't already in some of these places.
Oh, yes.
When they introduced their plantation system. It's been a phenomenal presentation, my brother. You've covered so much. You may well want to just wrap up with a few more words from us. Our family are glued. They're learning. They can't believe that, all the dates that you've been quoting and everything you've gone through, and it's just all just coming off, the top of your head. Phenomenal. Let me allow you to wrap up, my brother.
All right, lads. It was so nice having everyone, for me to be able to reach my people. We have to keep up knowledge. Sometimes don't really concentrate on the audience. Share knowledge, even if it's just one person reading it, they will take it and they'll spread it. It will be like we're running a relay race. So even if you get tired, you pass the baton, someone else is going to take it and the race doesn't stop. So you get tired, and then there's always somebody coming up. So they will take the message and they will spread it. It will go round, go round, go round, and then eventually it will meet its purpose. So our whole purpose is to unite and then be collective. We be together. We face them with one front. We don't want a situation where Sister Shanice is presenting something totally different from what I'm presenting. And then we know these people. We know mankind. They might just brandish us as a set of confused individuals. A group of people coming with heterogeneous ideas. They can just brandish and they're confused. They don't know what they're doing. So it's a situation where we can harmonize our stance, and then we march together and say we want this regardless. Africa, we face the same problems. A Nigerian is not better than someone living in Cameroon. A Ghanaian is not better than someone living in Senegal. Our countries, we are all marginalized. In the UK, I go to a warehouse, 20 brothers there from Ghana, 13 brothers there from Nigeria, 4 brothers there from Zimbabwe. It's a situation where we keep asking them, we cannot be working like this in European warehouses, paying the taxes here and empowering their economies. You want a situation we can work in Nigeria, we can work in Sierra Leone, we can work in the Gambia, we can work in South Africa, we can work in Ghana. So a situation where we need to start now, omitting the mistakes our parents they taught us late. So we shouldn't teach our children late as well. So we start now. My daughter already understands this police brutality in the UK. And the only reason she understands that she will easily be brutalized is simply because of her skin color. I didn't even teach her that one, but somehow, so we are aware. We are getting smarter. Look at when Floyd was killed in America. And then all our brothers and sisters there, they rallied and we burned down the United States. Look at when McDougall was killed in this country in 2011. And then the Police Complaints Commission said, because the police actually lied, that McDougall shot at the police and the bullet lodged in the police radio. Without that radio, it would have killed him. And then the Independent Police Complaints Commission said the gun recovered from McDougall and the bullet that was lodged into that police radio is not a match. So with that, we all understood there was a game they're trying to cover up. So we went out and then they burned down the whole of the United Kingdom. Just to say we are the never again generation. You cannot, the police now, they're not going to bring dogs and then try to bite black people or they're beating them. So what they've done now, they've taken their racism and discrimination into the tertiary sector. It's become sophisticated. So we too now have to step up the game and be sophisticated with our thoughts and thinking and be able to fight them. I'll leave it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It was nice. And then hopefully you have me again. And then once I do more research, like I said, any knowledge not shared, it will not really help our people. We need to keep spreading and sharing knowledge. And that's how we'll become powerful. I was have
Thank
to.
you so much, Brother Pharaoh Chia. We would be delighted and honored to have you back again. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with
Much
us.
to leave
And
you.
to
Thank you.
everyone in the chat, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Please share the video to family members and friends. Post it on your social media network. Each one teach one. A lot of really important dates, events, and that we all ought to be aware of because these are really important and significant dates in our history. So thank you, Brother Pharaoh. Thank you to everyone in the chat and all being well, internet permitting. I'll see you black next Wednesday, same time on the
Yes,
Sister
guys.
Saloon
Bye. Good
Show.
night. Good
One love,
night. Good night.
family. Bye for now. Good night.